Well, hello there. Well, you will see my first drive video after I got my truck back. Wouldn't you believe it broke down on 11th of December last year, and I got it back in February from Ardmore in Oklahoma, and I was on my way to New Braunfels and then back again to Hazlet. And what do you know? My truck broke down again. That did not make me happy. So it got towed back to San Antonio, and they took care of it, and I've just had my first week in it, and it's driving fantastic. So what they have done in Ardmore, that was they forgot to put a spacer and a guide kind of washer to stabilize one of the valves in cylinder 6. So it snapped and fell into the engine and destroyed the block and the head. Yeah, the engine was destroyed. How about that? How the hell can you forget that in the first place? You are a mechanic, right? So this is Dallas, and you will see this in the video with Mike from around the world. And for some pervert reason, they don't want to show the arrow over here. They want to do that. Oh, okay. That's the game we're playing. Oh, let me see if I can do it differently. And this is Dallas downtown on my way back to Hazlet in Texas to BNSF Alliance Rail, and dropping off 1,330 gallons of engine oil for the poor people in California, so they can keep their engines running. And this is a ghastly view, right? The weather has been fantastic all day, except for one thing. The wind coming due west was, to say the least, brutal. So at some point in time in the video, you will see that I am weaving a little because the wind is bad. And at the same time, I'm driving a trailer that is so much off alignment, 8 to 10 inches, dragging towards the curbside. So on my driver's side, my mirror, I can't even see the corner of my trailer. So I got two things against me. I got wind, and then I got physics. It's wanting to drag me towards the curb all the time. So my hands, even today, was brutal because Oklahoma roads are downright disgusting. And so are they from Sherman up to Oklahoma on US 75. That's downright dangerous and unhealthy to drive on. But they don't care in Grayson County. They don't care at all. Because it's been like that since 2015, and it's only getting worse. And they ain't doing anything. They're doing all kinds of other road work that it's not that important. It's more important to fix US 75 from Sherman to Oklahoma State. But I guess they got a mind of their own. They don't care. So it's a very brutal ride. So my wrists, my hands, feels like mush. 2 very rough days. And this is what I'm coming to in Dallas. I don't know what order they is doing this. Doesn't matter. And here again. And John Shadowburns 3D, he thinks my camera is awesome. It is. It's 12 megapixel. It got 120 degrees wide angle if I need it. And it also got 3 times set zoom. I can zoom more than that, but I got 3 different settings I can decide. And this one is close up. And here again, coming in towards Dallas. And here I'm on the express lane on Texas 183, headed west. And here you can see that the weather has been fine, but just before sunset, and that's something I have been noticing for a very long time. I know there's a lot of you that think that Planet X don't exist. It's okay. It's your problem, not my problem. But every time, and it works every time, when they're out spraying, they're always focusing the cover over in this region here. It's on purpose. I put the lens flare there, so it kind of looked like the winged disc. So somewhere in here, it will be visible to the naked eye because the sun is setting, meaning the light dims, and then the light from that one will emerge, and then you will see there's two objects in the sky, and I can assure you there will be some car crashing on the road if they see that. I think two, I will pull over and just, take a breather. Okay, there you are. Okay, now I see you for real with my own two eyes, not a lens flare, not a reflection. So this is what I have been seeing. That is, they're always focusing in this region of the sun. Not on the other side, always to the left. So then I come home, and this is the road that I'm living on. And right in front of me, the moon is coming up. It's not 100% good because it's dark, but still, the moon is more red than it is on the picture. And it was gigantic. Man, it was huge. It was like, whoa, is this moonfall? Well, over and out, and now we can go to Paul and Mike, and you're going to have some pretty interesting information on this one. I guarantee you that. You're going to enjoy that. And enjoy the ride in the good weather and downtown Dallas and what I just showed you, except this image that you won't see. Okay, over and out. God bless you.
May be also, and matter of fact, guess who's with us now? Mike from around the world.
God bless you, Pastor Paul.
God bless you, Mike. Let me see. Let me get as much volume as I can tonight. I'm on the road, so I don't have Israel or Brock to feed it in directly, but we'll do our best. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing pretty good.
Sound good?
Yeah, I'm watching, wide awake.
Somebody better be. Somebody better be. Mike, we got a lot to talk about tonight. We want to get your thoughts on several subjects, but I'm going to start with this Tijuana, Mexico. This thing, this crack opened up, 90 homes destroyed. Is this the fault line running right along Mexico, right up into California? Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's starting to reach it. It's starting to reach it. Actually, Pastor Paul, some folks that we know of actually alerted me to that issue. And they made reference to something we had talked about on the show. They heard this show. And they were wondering about that same thing. So a deeper look, a couple of them did tape. And that Coast Coast plate has new activity. So that's not, that's almost confirming of the problem that will eventually reach. California, again, that smell, they're going to detect a smell because in that area, there are two methane bases in that area. If that ground cracks deep enough, it's going to get quite smelly. I would imagine the birds are going to fly away too. I doubt if anybody will see birds because anytime gases are released from your life, birds are the first ones that give an indication something is wrong. And if everything turns out to be as it was seen, that's just not going to be a good situation. The part that gets me is that it just so happens that it's in conjunction with this issue with Ukraine. So, not to mention that, but also these weather phenomena, celestial phenomena, right? Yep. They just put out a notice. They had a rush notice last week. I didn't know if they were going to commit to it or not. They're sneaking out a narrative that, yes, we had meteors impact the atmosphere. Yes, these meteors slammed into the ocean, right?
What?
So they're admitting this. In fact, about three, I'd have to ask somebody in COT. we were speaking about, I was just giving them an example of something, how that news is always going to be reported late based on what they can do with the news and maneuver the people. And I told them about an incursion. We had an atmospheric incursion about an hour before that talk. But somebody said, well, we can't find it anywhere. I said, you're not, unless they can utilize it. So they had no choice but to come out with it because they know that more are coming. They downplayed it.
So they
tried to turn it into some scientific find, like, yes, we can see, we can see rocks come into the atmosphere and blow up and hit the sea and hit the ground and get their chemical makeup. They try to spin that story because what they do know is that we have a lot more coming, right?
So are you saying, Mike, that they confirmed that we had 2 or 3 asteroids that hit in the ocean, and that there's many more coming, and we're going to start hearing more? I mean, pretty soon this can't be hid, right?
No, they can't hide it. In fact, there are a few specials coming up that will handle that subject. They've got to get ahead of this subject as fast as they can. They're going to flip everything scientifically. They're going to tell the people this: yes, these objects will come into the atmosphere. They may damage homes. They may even kill some people. But we're going to study the chemical makeup, this, that, and the other. They're going to give it a spin so they can seem like they have some sort of control of the subject. But the truth is, they're always looking in hindsight. They can see these things coming, but what can you do about them? You can't do anything about them.
No. And they're not going to tell us. They're not going to tell us the ones, Mike. They're not going to tell us the ones that are going to deep impact us or hit us. They're going to tell us about all the ones that are going to near miss us. Is that kind of the deal?
Yeah, that's what they always do. For everyone they do talk about, that's just like the International Space Station. They've had countless emergencies. Then the life boats, you could say, more than a dozen times this year. Since January, they've been evacuated more than a few times. And they're never going to talk about that stuff, out loud, because what can they do about it? If they alerted people to this, that we have an increasing problem with inbound rocks and things like that, people would get nervous. They can't do a thing. They can't do anything. They can talk about it all day with all these contingencies, but the truth is, they can't do anything. They can't affect it. So they're running out of wiggle room to operate because it's becoming too noticeable. And just about everybody has some sort of a cell phone or a cell phone with the ability to see at night. And so a lot of people are going to begin to detect these things, right? And insurance companies are finally, they're coming out this brand new, that they're amending their policies. Because if I'm not mistaken, they're going to have to drop, certain insurance companies are going to have to drop these, they're in the category of acts of God, but they're going to have to drop the collisions from space part. They're going to have to drop that from their coverage because it's costing too much money. So we have a lot of changes coming up. It's becoming more and more notable. And my hope is that people will pay attention because everything they see, I know a lot of people say, well, if you talk about that, what does that do? Well, for a Christian, it does everything. Number one, it keeps them on their toes. It'll wake them up every single morning and they'll say, I don't have time to fool around. It can actually encourage a person to stay on the straight and narrow because they're given reminders that, this isn't paradise. We're passers-by. And all this is going to end just like God said it was going to end.
Yep.
And we just happen to live in the time when it's going to happen. Good news is, if God had us to be born during this time, we're able to withstand anything that comes. So we can set our minds to be functional during this time, but we can't deny what God said is coming. No. Prophecy is what God is going to do. He's not forecasting a future that he thinks he knows about. No, he's telling us exactly what he's going to do.
Amen.
And exactly what he's going to let Satan do. And so if we prepare for this, there's no harm. There's no real harm to us. We're functional, operational during those days.
Amen.
But if a person's on the wrong side, that should give them enough motivation to get their lives, in order.
I mean, prophecy tells you, God is, like you said, he's not guessing what's going to happen. He's telling you what's going to happen. And then when these things happen, it confirms his word, which should in turn increase our faith to understand that our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is going to return. And so our job is to watch and pray. And we see the event would prophetically speak them out and say, look, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. So having said that, Mike, obviously, while we're talking about asteroids coming in and that type of thing, extreme weather conditions from this binary system, this Planet X effects. So you said, this is amazing, but you said this last Thursday. You said, look, pretty soon there's going to be straight line winds on the open seas that ships will not be able to stir. They won't be able to manage the winds. They can't control their ships. That was Thursday night. You said it. Monday, we had a Norwegian cruise ship called the Norwegian Escape. It had 3,000 passengers on it with 16 crew members. I mean, this is a big boat, and it could not control the boat. The ship was driven it ran aground over near the Dominican Republic. They had to send out people to rescue the boat, to tug it out of there, to pull it out of there. This is incredible. Yes, the question is that?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, Mike, is this the beginning of more and more ships that will be run aground like the Norwegian Escape?
Yeah, Pastor Paul, I'll tell you what, that was the ship you know about. If you guys recall, back, it was a few months ago, well, it was last year, they had a military vessel and another military vessel ran into it.
Yes.
Come to find out, some of the underwater currents in that area are they're out of control. Last week, there was another military ship that was, it kind of ran into trouble, right? Two passenger ships, smaller, that ran aground. They could not navigate where they were. Some of the currents were too strong. The ocean is changing, and as these winds pick up, the ocean currents are going to, they're going to follow suit. And we have all this volcanism. Warm temperatures from the bottom of the ocean can really cause water to move at high rates of speed, and that can be a nightmare. There have been certain currents that they shear one another. If a boat gets caught in the middle of that, it will turn it 180 degrees. It'll do that in a heartbeat, no matter how big that ship is.
What?
There were two ships that slammed into their ports this year, right? They couldn't stop. They had all the isopods on full reverse, and it still didn't stop the ship. That the current of the water did some freakish thing and pushed both those ships into the port. So there's been a lot of those happenings. But again, they release the ones they can control the information about. They don't want to, they want everybody to take a cruise out there, so they don't, they can't put out too much. But then you have the ships, plus you have the pumice that continues to come up on the shores.
Yeah.
Then you have certain types of fish that are bottom dwellers that are forced up to the top dead, of course. All this indicates that the oceans are changing rapidly. I mean, rapidly. So yeah, expect that. And as these atmospheric and these conditions change regarding weather, we're going to see some rough waters. Get to the point where no one can travel on the sea unless you have a very robust military grade ship. Right? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to travel.
Well, hey, Mike, let me ask you a question about that. Is that why they're making it more and more difficult for us to travel by ship and by plane? Is the effects of this binary system going to get so bad that planes will be grounded and ships will be basically docked, and everyone needs to just stay in the location that they're in or in the country they're in?
Oh, it'll reach that point. For example, in Russia this year, people will hear of swarms first. That'll be the first thing. The second thing is going to be water. Just all over the place in Russia, they're going to have a water issue. I believe that the water woes, I'm going to call them again very shortly. And because tons of water is just going to be dumped in Russia. We're going to have a similar problem. But the biggest problem in the U.S. is going to be land mass destabilization. These points of fracture within the U.S. That are going to become too notable, especially like places in Colorado. In fact, where you have hardened facilities, people are going to hear that they're moving, they're jumping these facilities. They're not going to be where they are now. Now, I know they did this right before 2012 and right after, they're going to have to move everything again, right? Because the strata, after analyzing the strata in the rock of some of these very old rocks in the U.S., they found that the stabilization points are not where they thought they would be. And that means you're going to have mountain shifts that could potentially happen during earthquakes. That wouldn't be good for any underground facility. For example, Cheyenne Mountain, that whole system could collapse. It really could collapse.
What?
And so
Are
they're
you
going to end up
serious?
rearranging things because they didn't do their geology see what they're able to see these days. So they couldn't plan for that. And they found out that, what they thought was stable was not so stable. It wasn't. That was information from a while ago. They can see much more now with new methods. And these new methods are, they're running up the tab because they're finding out they're going to remove a few things.
Folks, Mike Around the World's with us tonight. Obviously, this is just the beginning of sorrows. But the earth is shaking, the heavens are quaking, my mind is aching, my back is breaking. Yeah, and even this morning I was able to get some scrambled eggs and bacon. But there's some serious issues here, Mike. And you mentioned Russia and the floods. Let's pivot there for a moment because, Mike, the scorched earth approach by Putin. This is war crimes. What is he doing? And will he stop with Ukraine, or is he going to finish it? Do you think he takes all of Ukraine?
Well, let's put it this way. Lots of troops are on alert right now, on a raised alert. We've got NATO will probably end up by the end of this week with at least 850,000 troops.
What? Are you serious?
Fulfilling that alert posture they have right now. Yeah, because and Putin himself has been throughout the onset of this conflict when things were not with this talks with NATO. Every time he talks with he relocates people out of major cities of Russia, right? So like this, so everybody understands this. Putin is not playing, right? He has a good poker face, but he also knows his own timing. In other words, he knows time to make his move and when it's time to fold. The inevitable has happened. He knows his own checkbook. Okay. He also, because he does not want the next encroachment from NATO was into Russia. Russia was being handled by NATO in a way he didn't like. Right. And Putin is just like this. Putin he's a communist at heart. He does not see communism like we do. We don't romanticize about communism because we're democracy babies, right? He's a communist baby. And so the glory of the Russian kingdom to him was back in the communist days. Yeah. That never died with him. He put up with NATO for a long time. That's what he put up with it. But within his country, he's had a track record of doing what he did for years now. But nobody paid attention because he was deemed a good guy, right?
Right.
But they promised him that there's some secrets about this place that a lot of people don't know. And in politics, you can promise people things that you can't deliver.
Right.
That same thing happened with Putin. And when he found out they weren't going to deliver, right, he made his own move. So it's not that Putin is it's not like he changed all by himself. When somebody makes a deal, and then they back out of the deal totally and then deny you even your first position, okay, that will anger a person. Yeah. That's precisely what we have here. So by politics, he was backstabbed.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
The plan was thrown away. New people moved in, and they denied the first plan in the first place. Gave no maneuverability and basically no continued wealth for his country. His country could not grow. Russia could not grow. And so he said, no more of this. The Ukraine, of course, they're known for switching sides all throughout history. And so they basically go where the protection is. That's just the way they are. Half that population is, they're mixed up from a bunch of different places, but that's part of their heritage also. But the real problem are the NATO provinces. He dropped some missiles, Pastor Paul, less than half a mile from that NATO border a few times.
Yeah.
And it's only a matter of time before one of those missiles. Now, to my understanding, I believe that one of the missiles already hit the border. Okay, so he's already encroached Europe.
Okay.
That's the way they see it. So that caused NATO 2 days ago to go on high alert. So they changed their entire alert status, but so has Russia. Russia has been moving its important people out of major cities. That should be a big bell to everybody. NATO has been mustering, and they've been sending out the consolidated alerts to most of their folks. And even U.S. troops, I believe that we have, at least in the USA, 500,000 that could potentially, if something happens, be deployed. Because what they're thinking about is this: Putin is not. The way things are going right now. We just called his bluff. He made a statement. He said, if anybody interferes, right? I'll just put it short. He'll hit them with a hammer. They never saw
that's
before.
what he basically said.
We interfered. We're sending munitions. We've been supplying munitions.
Yeah.
We've been supplying small arms fire as well as long range anti-artillery weapons.
And we're gathering our forces. We're building the coalition of NATO forces. We're all gathering in, waiting for the moment to move in on Russian troops. Just waiting for him to make one mistake.
And one of the reasons, Basketball, is because they know where his nuclear missiles are. They know that their status is hot, so they're not gonna do anything that would cause this guy to push a button. Okay, so they're not gonna do anything. Problem with that is they've already interfered. Putin has already caught them. They haven't publicized it, but they are mustering their troops right now as we speak. And this could turn something very big within 2 weeks. 2 weeks
Really?
time.
2 weeks
one
time.
One of the estimates from NATO is 3 weeks. One of the estimates, or two of the estimates from the U.S. is 2 weeks. My personal estimate's around the 2 week mark.
Okay.
But they believe that it could go a whole lot further.
What do you think will happen, let's say, in your 2 week mark? What do you think will take place?
Well, I think that there's a loss of command structure in Russia right now. And this is the biggest problem. Putin himself is not ordering all the strikes that are happening in the Ukraine. That's the problem. Putin is finding out later on that somebody hit this place or somebody hit that place. And of course, it's on the Russian side. But you have commanders acting out of their own egos, right?
Right.
Some commanders they're in the military there, so if you defy orders, you're shot dead on the spot. There's some commanders who suffered that. So you have a lot of dissidents there. You also have a lot of people who they can't stand the Ukrainians, and if they could, they'd blow the whole place up with the people in it. So Putin has ordered his troops in there, but his troops are not following their orders to the letter. They're making up their own wartime orders, because in wartime, of course, you have the flexibility to carry out standard or general orders, and so that's what they're doing. The unfortunate part about that is they know that it's only a matter of time, because it's already happened. It's been put down about 4 or 5 times. One of these commanders is going to go rogue. They're going to do the ultimate thing. They're close, and they do have access to nuclear arms. Their nuclear weapons are not protected like ours are, right? We have to pass keys and all this stuff to even arm these things. Russia's not like that. So they have a very different type of mechanism for their nuclear weapons. And one of these commanders are born into a bloodline that will command those nuclear weapons.
Well, we also know that
trust
Putin.
Them all.
We also know, someone just made a great statement there on the chat room. We also know that Putin is what he did in Chechnya, what he did in Syria. He's not afraid to destroy civilians if necessary, and so he's proven that here again in Ukraine, and so he's the ultimate KGB. He's the ultimate old school Russian communist.
That's
School.
Who he's been.
Yeah. And that's who he's going to be till the day they put him 6 feet underground. And so as we know, that's what we're dealing with. What we don't know is what we're dealing with China. We don't know where Iran's thinking. I mean, what's your thoughts on China?
China's going to back him. China's going to directly give Russia lots of money in a couple of days, period. That's period. Iran has already positioned. Iran is also mustering troops right now, just in case anybody know. They are mustering troops, and they're also in communication with nuclear powers in the Middle East. So that means your places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and all these different U-scans over there, right?
Right.
they're getting all these guys together because something is about to break loose in the Middle East. One of their primary targets is Saudi Arabia, because of what they have. They double-crossed some folks that they shouldn't have. Yemen is also starting to get their command structure back together. One of the bigger problems we have with all this assemblage of these alliances, Pastor Paul, is a mistake. When you start bringing all this military power to bear, right, you have this unavoidable 99%, every single war was prematurely started from a mistake, from a communications mistake. That's how 99% of conflicts begin.
Wow.
Right. This one's no different. From someone's mistake, something is going to happen. The country's going to have to cover for that mistake. People have access in the Middle East to these nuclear armaments.
Yeah.
They have very loose security.
Yeah.
Russia right now has an issue with, you do realize they have a lot of Islamic forces in Russia that are wearing Russian uniforms right now, right?
He's bringing them in.
It's outrageous, Master Paul. We're talking about the command structure all the way close to the top.
Well, isn't that part of what he's doing? He's using the Chechens, he's using the Syrians, he's using some Africans, he's using Islamic warriors who are ruthless.
Yeah, and if these are not just any Islamic-based individuals. These are people who are trained in Russian special forces, Spetsnaz. So this is your top special forces training for any soldier that would be in Russia. These guys are hardened,
hardcore,
but they're Islamic. You're talking about many brigades and divisions that are Islamic and have Islamic loyalties, and they hate the West, and they hate Israel. Now, what does that mean? That means you have an Islamic army training and in combat in Russia right now. If Putin falls, and he's already given the go-ahead, right, for some more troops to go forward in this battle, because it's going to be more than the Ukraine. It's going to be with NATO also. He's given the go-ahead. So you're looking at a total assembly of an Islamic force no one on this earth has seen in modern times, and is sitting right there in Russia. It's backed up by Hezbollah. Hezbollah has, their numbers have gone up at least, what they say, about 419%, I do believe it is. That's how big their numbers have gotten. Hezbollah is it's a formidable force right now in the Middle East. It is split all the way from, you're looking at Lebanon all the way down to parts of India. These guys are right now. They also have been rotating into Russia, the Russian army. First of all, we have a situation here, right? That will likely not go away, because one of the last stages of any type of a real jihad or something like that is going to be the training of the forces, utilizing modern day weaponry. These guys have rotated throughout all the countries of high technology, and they are now adapted to it, which means they know how to use it. Right?
We're not talking about a ragtag bunch of fighters from the mountains of Afghanistan. We're talking about now hardcore Islamic jihadis who are now have access to modern technology and weapons of Russia, have been well trained, battle hardened, and got tanks, and now they can fly planes, and they're getting access to the nuclear bombs. And this is part, I think, when you look at the Bible prophecy, Mike, you're on the money here. This is partly why Magog is able to gather a coalition of Islamic nations to go against Israel and to literally go over top that Golan Heights in the battle of in Ezekiel 38 and 39. They believe they're going to win. Now, we've read the scriptures. We know they won't, but they believe they will. And in the process of getting to Israel, would you say, Mike, that a lot of innocent Europeans, maybe even North American people, will die as these guys try to make their move toward Israel?
Yeah, well, biblically, no one is going to stop them.
Right.
No one. And here's one of the major points to me is this: if not for God himself, they wouldn't be stopped at all.
Amen. Yeah, you're right.
You're talking about a force. That's a real force.
Yeah.
So, and it's, but to see the formation of it, it should, I know that everybody's looking at because they're promoting things within the Ukraine. But as a Christian, I'm always going back to prophecy, because I've noticed events happen in the world and they go in the world, right? Some events have nothing to do with prophecy.
Right.
But when they have, when they're so featured in prophecy, I have to pay attention because these are long-lasting issues that will not go away the next day. These are systemic issues that continue to grow. And that's what, the problem is a little worse than any things. But again, they're not going to tell people this because that would panic half the world.
While we're talking about Russia a little bit, I'm going to get back to some of these other things, but Chernobyl. I actually had a meeting here in Dallas with an individual who works in the federal government, who's a good handle on the ability to get information, real good information. And he said, Paul, you can ask Mike this. Maybe he can help elaborate on it. Chernobyl is not under control. He said there is radiation leaking there, at significant radiation. It's been detected in the area. It's not just the immediate area. I mean, it's spreading quite a bit. Now, he says the media is not going to tell you about that.
No, they can't do that.
But,
they won't
but Mike, can you confirm that there is a lot more leakage of radiation going on there in Chernobyl than what?
Yeah, in fact, you know what? Before this war started, they just recently had an inspection, and they had to pull their crews, the inspection teams out. They had to pull that inspection team out, and that was that January? They had to pull the inspection team out. So they had this place is decrepit. Radiation lasts for a long time, right? All they can do is to basically flood it, right? And to keep any active portions of it as cool as possible. You start interfering with the pumps, the water flow, some of the maintenance devices that are around this place. You're going to have massive radiation leakage, right? Because it was contained. You cut the power for 5 minutes, it's going to start saturating the ground again. And so this is what we have. Unlike any other element on Earth, radiation just doesn't evaporate and go up into the atmosphere.
No.
It continues. Once it affects something, that something is affected, and that radiation has a cumulative effect. So it keeps the saturation amount keeps going up. And if it can't, the more it comes in contact with, the more it's going to saturate and the more it spreads. So that's a real bad problem.
Yeah.
Which means if it continues at its current rate, that whole place within about a month and a half, 2 months, is going to be uninhabitable. We're talking about miles out from Chernobyl itself, which is going to, that just kills a few cities in the first place. Now, one of my arguments, I had a personal argument against anybody building around that area without proper protocol. They did proper protocol to shut it, kind of like Fukushima. Nobody's talking about Fukushima, right?
Right.
They think Fukushima's okay. No, it isn't.
No.
Fukushima's not okay because that radiation is just not going to go away. But anyway, people have to deal with that later. And plus, that place is too volatile. It's going to get smacked again by another earthquake.
Well, yeah.
It's going to break
Let's talk about that.
Of Fukushima.
Let's talk about that. This earthquake we just had a couple of days ago, and it happened again with another geomagnetic storm or another CME that hit. The first one that hit, I think, might have caused the Tijuana crack in the earth in Mexico. The next one that hit, we had a 6.4 followed by a 7.3 earthquake in Japan. 4 people are dead, 100 are injured. And there was a blue explosion, Mike, over Fukushima area. The whole city went dark. 700,000 people without power. I don't know if a substations exploded, but this was Fukushima. Did we have any information? Did it loosen up some more cracks? Water leaking? What happened?
Well, Fukushima's going down, right? That all that radiation, they try to
bury
I'm not
it.
going to say drown. They try to bury Fukushima. The problem is the ground underneath Fukushima is cracking.
Yeah.
It's giving way, right? So it's not going to work anyway. They're working double time, overtime, underneath the water and above the water to keep this place contained. There's no way they can do this. One earthquake with one tsunami could carry half of that contaminated material and just destroy half the seas, right? I mean, it could absolutely obliterate
half the seas.
That's a nightmare waiting to happen, right? You can't, just by not talking about the problem is not going to make it go away. And they don't have enough concrete to actually secure that weak mountain it's on. It's sitting on, think of it this way, it's sitting on top of a mountain that's cracking.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
cracking. And when it cracks enough, because that whole area should, in my opinion, nobody should be around there. That place should be evacuated. They should keep people far away from it, and they should get every single soul they know on earth that can engineers to come up with some type of reinforced wall, like underwater, to keep this place encapsulated, right, for the next 500 years. Because another earthquake, and that undoes all of what they do. And we have a similar problem in America. See, we take our nuclear waste, and it's in very specific places in the USA. So what if we have an earthquake? If we have an earthquake in the USA that hits near Mexico again, but goes a little bit northern, fastball is going to potentially destroy the Midwest. I'd absolutely destroy the Midwest. What? We have a lot of radioactive waste. A lot of radioactive waste there buried. It's inside the earth. But if we have an earthquake that opens that up, who are they going to hire to go clean it up? And we know something like that's going to happen, biological or nuclear or chemical, because in the Bible it says that people were given special jobs. That first of all, they had to burn the weapons for 7 years.
Right.
You only incinerate weapons if they're severely contaminated, and not just any contamination, but if they are irradiated, right? The only thing you can do with that is burn those weapons in place with incendiary devices, burn them in place,
Yep.
And have those things go down into the earth.
Yep.
And that would take about 7 years to get rid of it.
Yep.
You would also have to mark every single body you went across, because everybody can't handle this. So they would have to be put in special hazmat gear to collect the bodies, any of the dead, because they would also be irradiated.
Yeah.
That goes for chemical, but that's in the Bible. So we know something like that's going to happen.
That's in the Battle of Gog and Magog. It'll take 7 years to burn the weapons and 7 months to bury the dead. And it even says that the nation of Israel will have to hire people to come and find the bodies to bury them. Even
and don't they mark them too?
Months.
It's in there that they mark them.
They mark
those bodies.
Yes.
And they get rid of them. Special employment to do that. You know what's so funny? We're not talking about a bonfire. We're talking about incinerators.
Right.
And it takes an incinerator 7 years to totally deplete the particles of radiation. 7 years.
Wow.
You have to burn something for 7 years.
So this is nuclear.
When that's amazing to me.
So what you're saying is, Mike, there is going to be a nuclear confrontation in the battle of in Megiddo, in the Battle of and it's going to be the Russians and their bands of people, which we can read in Ezekiel 38. They're going to come over top the Golan Heights, over the mountains of Israel. They're going to go right into the valley, and this is where the battle's going to happen, where God is going to literally put an end to that. But it has to be radiation. 7 months, we know it is. And let me ask you a question, Mike. I saw where Russia sent troops into Ukraine. They also sent a lot of human crematorium, mobile crematorium.
Yeah.
They're not the Russian soldiers that die are not being sent back in body bags. They're being cremated on the battlefield.
Yeah, they're incinerating those bodies.
Yeah, is that to keep the pain of seeing the flag draped coffins coming back to?
A long time ago that if you start bringing a lot of bodies back, it demoralizes your country, right?
Yeah.
It's going to demoralize your country. When you're in a battle, if those individuals are not coming back for some reason, they just don't think about it. Russia can shut down their media, right?
Yeah.
They're not like us. They can shut down their media. And when they incinerate those bodies, they're not going to ask until they're briefed. And even right now, to this very day, the majority of Russia believes the rhetoric coming out of Russia. They believe it. They believe that the Ukraine is full of neo-Nazis. Yep. They believe it, right? They're behind Putin 100%. So his rhetoric works for the people, both out of fear tactics and otherwise, but it's working. They did that. Also, you have to have those incinerators. If you are about to engage in chemical, nuclear, biological warfare, right? Because all of them, we have a Fox. We have a vehicle called a Fox. We have several vehicles like that, but they have their vehicles too that are for NBC environments, nuclear, biological, chemical environments.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I think even on TV, you could see some of them. I think they were sanitizing those clips, but you could see at least 12 that were going down this one route, and so they're expecting anything and everything, which also lets me know they will utilize any tactic necessary if anybody interferes. And I believe what Putin was talking about was both nuclear and chemical and biological, right? Because he has all of them. Russia excels in chemical weapons, not biological, but chemical weapons. And they have some pretty nasty chemical weapons that there's really no protection from.
Okay, now when I had my dream 2 months before this thing happened, I saw Russia attacking Ukraine, and I also saw later a major explosion in a battle in Israel. I saw these uniforms. The United States broke them out, and they were these uniforms, and they were these special uniforms that with special helmets and shields on the face. And found out that there is a uniform similar to that. According to Agent X, he said it's called the NBC. It's the nuclear, biological, chemical uniforms. We've already heard reports, Mike, that there's been some chemical usage already in some remote areas of Ukraine by the Russians. Can you confirm that at all?
As far as going into that area, I would say this: if you see your dream, probably those NBC suits you saw yep. people with the helmets on too.
Yep.
They had the masks on. So you saw them in MOP 4, Mission Oriented Posture 4 is what you saw them in. That's the full gear, right? You have MOP 1, MOP 2, MOP 3, MOP 4. You saw them in MOP 4, which means they were in a contaminated environment. For that to happen, that's 100% they were utilizing chemical weapons. And that's it's very difficult to fight in. That raises the stakes of irritation, aggravation, and everything else. But there are chemical weapons in Ukraine. There are chemical weapons chemical weapons were utilized in Crimea to a degree. They were used in Syria, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about Russian chemical weapons, and because they excel as far as making chemical weapons. So I would not doubt that there were chemical weapons utilized in test capacities on the outskirts of some of the major fighting. I wouldn't doubt that at all. But Pastor Paul, if you saw that,
yeah, I did.
My goodness, that's of all the things, right?
Yeah.
Of all the things, all the weapons that we have, which are even a nuclear weapon is humane if you're right there ground zero, because you just it's going to incinerate everybody, except for the ones who try to hide. They're going to have to live in a radio contaminated world. But chemical weapons are cruel. They're cruel. And there's little to no protection for some of those chemical weapons. Russia, for example, has developed another form of mustard gas with an HG nerve agent overlay with it, which will eat through any material out there. So if he drops it, right, if he explodes an artillery shell with this stuff in it, it will actually stay in the atmosphere. It'll start collecting water. As when it gets heavy, it comes down in droplets, and those droplets will go right through and no material. Right? It's highly acidic and it concentrates. It starts to interact with some of the acidic nature of the atmosphere in the first place. So that stuff is nasty. It'll get on top of you. To get inside. If you breathe it in, you're done for. The American NBC suit, a soldier in MOP 4, only has, I believe it's an hour and a half, right, before he has to change everything. And he's going to have to wear he's going to have to wear there's an external shell that goes with MOP 4 that special operations soldiers use that they can put over the MOP 4 uniform. But everybody does not have that. And even that will only last about 30 minutes in a chemical environment. So the one scripture in the Bible where Jesus was talking to his disciples, Pastor Paul, and he says, if God had not cut time short,
yeah,
right?
There'd be no flesh.
No flesh would have been saved. And I looked at the word flesh. That word flesh was inclusive of life. So you could say, if God hadn't cut that time short, life, there would be no life on this planet. So man will be given the room, right, to start using all this stuff against each other.
Yes.
And it's going to be, if God, for the elect's sake, he said, that time was cut short.
Yes.
But if he had not interfered and put a halt to it, there would be no life left on the face of the earth. And so he had to put a halt to it. So that kind of lets you know that man is going to utilize everything that they can. And given the mentality of some of our leaders, because not just Putin, but it looks like everybody drank from the same Kool-Aid jug, didn't they?
Yeah.
And all of them are gone wacko. I've
They
never
are.
seen anything like it. I'm not a comedian or anything, but how can we sit there and look at leaders but they're taking a little, they call them old man steps, the grandpa steps, little short steps. You can't, something is wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
I think you have other folks on the other side who are doing anything and everything. And all of them have the ability to start a nuclear war.
It's a dangerous
really
time,
do.
folks. It's a very dangerous time, Mike. And so let's discuss this. I mean, Mike Around the World's with us tonight, guys, giving us some tremendous information. No doubt about that. We're going to continue to watch what happens in Ukraine. This is definitely prophecy. And the dream I had with the unit, with these Mach 4, whatever he's saying. I mean, I ain't got no clue. I'm just telling you what I saw. And it certainly is, it was dreaded. Faces were in dread. Women were crying in the corner. There was some kind of weapon that Putin had that we didn't even know about, or if we knew, it was never discussed before. He brought this thing out in the dream. But let me say this, Mike, as we're looking at all these things now, they know that this waves of energy, I mean, the effects of Planet X is coming. I mean, the world leaders know this. They've been preparing for this for a long time. Do you feel that is the dream you had with the coffin and the stone steps? I'm not going to ask you who was in the coffin, all that, but do you feel like it's a part, what's happening now with the world order, if you will, NATO, Russia, China, Iran? If you look at the whole world's volatile scenario here, do you believe the dream that God showed you of the coffin and stone steps is in play now?
I do. First, the stone steps. With the stone steps, Pastor Paul, when I saw the person with the people in uniforms at the time I'd never seen before, and they were escorting this gentleman down the stone steps. I looked in the street. There were armored vehicles in the street, and it was just anarchy. It was the hatred level in the streets was so incredibly high. The people were thick. Everything was dangerous. But I'd never known such depression and sorrow during that time, right? This individual is certainly, and what's so frightening is I absolutely know 100% that's going to take place. I know it's going to take place. The conditions when it takes place, it even in what was that, in 2012 and 13, when I shared this with everybody else, Pastor Paul, during this time, before it ever started, there was a brown cloud approaching from the west. Yeah. And it had fingers like tentacles, and it was reaching everywhere. Well, we just had the coronavirus.
Yes, we did.
Right?
Yep.
It was going everywhere. And but that wasn't, the kicker was that this marked the time when everything changed. Everything changed. There was this event of the stone step going to cause a hatred nobody has known in the USA. And when the USA displays that type of hatred, when people are at that level of who they are, it's just a negativity I'd never seen before. That's when they don't go back to the way they were. It degrades from there in a horrible way.
Did it turn to anarchy? Does anarchy break loose at that point?
It was worse than that, Pastor, because there were people in the USA. Let me tell you this part quick. There were people in the USA, and it was just people from all walks of life began to do things. One guy got into a cab, and he just shot the other cab driver, pushed him out. Now I'm sitting in the back of the cab.
Okay.
And he says, "You better go out of the city." And I'm sitting there like, "Well, what's going on?" He said, "Too late, get out." And he pointed the gun in my face. And so I just got up and got out. I went into a house, and this one lady was like, "You can't bang." And they got her too. These guys weren't playing. It was people. Some were soldiers. Some were clerks at the grocery store. Some were driving buses. There were people that just activated all over the place.
What?
And they began to do things in a very stern way. I'm talking about emotionless. And these people were on a mission. They didn't hesitate to do anything. Everybody at that point was on lockdown that same night. whether you had food or not, whether you had a place to stay or not. They say go indoors. If you're outside, you're going to be gone. And they wanted people indoors, and they were going from house to house, assigning everybody a number, and they told everybody, don't forget your number. This happened within this country, because I was in an airport I found myself going somewhere else, but I got stopped at the airport when this happened. This happened after the stone steps. I mean, these people were cold. And from that point, the entirety of the earth changed. This was something that caught people off guard. While people trusted in certain rights they had, and they trusted in another person's integrity to uphold those rights, all of that evaporated. These people came out of nowhere, and they knew what to do. They suppressed everybody else very quickly, and life changed at that point. I can honestly say I don't want to be here during that point. My goodness, that was awful. But nevertheless, this is a type of environment that happened after the anarchy at the stone steps. That's what happened. And the coffin was involved in that right before this, because that person had already died right before this. And those events, the Mexican issue that we're having, and you know what's so funny, Pastor, all this is documented, right? I normally don't revisit this stuff because I
Right.
can't stand to have those type dreams and things. But
these are so.
There was something happening at the border, and there was people with megaphones. A lot of attention was drawn to the border of the USA,
Okay.
and you know, all this stuff was going on. And of course, shortly thereafter, it just went all downhill. So I think we are right in the middle of it. There are too many, I call them markers, right? Markers are if you have a dream and then all of a sudden you're doing something one day and you see something happen in the real world that happened in the dream and your stomach drops. I call them markers.
Yeah.
There are too many markers that have gone off that it's almost like the Lord will not let me forget about it.
Well,
He
you know,
won't let me
Mike,
turn
whenever
away
you're dealing
from-
with like yourself, myself, and others that actually have prophetic dreams, we get a prophetic dream, but we may not have the interpretation of that dream until the events unfold, as you call them, markers. And when those markers start happening, then we say, oh no, this is I saw this. This is it. Now it's moving to another phase. This is why prophecy is so important. There's Bible prophecy, and then there's what's called a right now word, or an unction of the Holy Ghost, a prophetic word that comes to the body of Christ. And it's the gift of prophecy. And it actually happens in dreams or visions. The Bible told us this in the book of Joel. So this dream has made a major impression on you. You've been watching events and the information you're privy to. And each time you see another marker, it leads you to the fact that we're closer and closer to the very thing that you saw. Not every dream is prophetic, as you know, Mike. But when they are, there's no denying them. You know it. It's like you know that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. When you know that this is from God, then you watch to see what the markers are. I'm going to ask you this then, Mike. With all these things that are happening, simultaneously, we have the effects of this binary system. Do you anticipate, I know we just did the climate crisis, and you did a great job explaining that. Is there anything that they have that has been discovered, or anything internally that has been identified, not released to the public yet, but at least been identified, that has got world leaders speeding up whatever their plan is? Is there anything indicating that?
Oh, yeah. It is, Pastor Paul, it has. It's so unfortunate because no one dare utter anything. But I'll tell you this. Everybody already knows. They already know. They know the events. They may not know the timing. They know the events. But I tell you, the real reaction thing to watch, right? It's almost like watching. If you saw ripples in a pond, you know something water, right? The ripples are your politicians. When politicians, it's one thing when they start doing their politics and they're really interested in their policies and they really fight for their policy to make it. When they stop doing that, you believe there's an issue. There's a problem. There's a problem. When they alter their attention from what's really important to people to stupid things, you might want to pay attention because they're preparing for something else. It never fails when a politician has something on his or her mind. They normally downplay everything else, and they're so focused on that one thing that they start making gaffes over everything else. So what they're really interested in, right? If they're really interested in something, they will not make a gaffe because they believe so passionately about the cause. And as of late, everything has been a gaffe. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
Everything has been a gaffe. It's almost like they don't care. I saw a person say, they were talking about the Ukraine. I can't name who this politician was, but if you just watch him, you can see this person looked like they had to really think to say this. They said, well, we got to be human and we have to be caring. And it was like they were trying to think of a bunch of words to say. They didn't. They were just responding. They didn't care a bit, right? When they let law enforcement, when they put law enforcement back in the hands of law enforcement, we've got a problem. And what I mean by that, when law enforcement changes from state to state, when they start making their own rules, then they have no oversight. They're going to let go topside of many things that happen topside. It's going to start, I said this years ago, I'll say it again, it's going to start with the food and supplies. When we have food shortages, it's being diverted somewhere else. There's no way in the world, no one on earth should have a shortage of food. I know that for a fact. It doesn't matter if all the containing ships sunk in the ocean. We should not have a food shortage. There are too many facilities that manufacture food. Yeah. Even right now, there are facilities that have been overrun with orders and everything else, but they have other commitments they have to make. And that's why we have a shortage. Things are being diverted. This Jade Helm thing.
Yeah.
All the Christians, you know what? It matters what Christians find out. I'll say that. This bugs people when Christians as a whole, when their spirit is led to a subject or a thing and they get stuck on that thing, there's something to it. God is not going to have his children in the dark about any of these events. And all these preparations, they mean something. And if you go line them up, you see what's happening from logistics, how food travels and shipping containers and all this. They went over long before we had the shortage, right? Yes. When something happens to the fuel, Trump showed us that America can easily turn the pumps on and gas prices can go to $2 a tank, and everybody can look good, right? So, but as of late, you know what the order was. The order was reluctant. The order was kind of under the table. And it was a haphazard order, but they said, go ahead and just refit all the oil wells in America. This is as of late, right? Right. But some hazard order that they didn't want to. They don't care. They don't care about it.
They do not care.
But Trump showed us, hey, in a week, we can bring our gas prices down for not only us, but for all the other nations.
Yes,
also.
We can supply Europe.
Us straight to our faces, we have a lot of oil here.
Right. We could supply all of Europe. They wouldn't have to buy a drop of oil from Russia. We could supply all of America, and we'd still have so much oil that we'd have enough for 1,000 years. This is the Green New Deal lie that we've been sold a bill of goods. One last question, Mike, before we let you get away, and that is behind the door in Tibet. Okay, so you talked about that in the climate crisis. We did some research, Heidi and I. It took us about 2 weeks. We did find out that there is a wall in the middle of the mountains in Tibet, and behind it, we found there's some ancient manuscripts. Is that all there is, or is there more, or other things?
There's a whole lot more. And in fact, anything past all that happens in Tibet, they're going to downplay. Scholars are going to hate it. All right, they're going to downplay it. So it never, when they find anything in Tibet, quickly, it's like a whole team of people will come and say, that's nonsense. Leave it alone. It's just, this. They don't want anybody. They don't want scholars. They don't want anybody looking into any of that. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what they're going to do with Tibet every single time. But you're looking at a door, a very important door for humanity. It will be exposed. Right. It's going to be. It will be. Everybody's going to know what that door is. We're going to know, and then. There's not going to be one place on earth that will not be touched by the knowledge of that door. That they will know. But it's one of those things that anytime anything comes out about anything in Tibet, right, concerning anything ancient, you have a whole team of folks that will say, no, this doesn't get out there. So they will deface it. They will shame it. They'll do anything they can do to cause people to say, that's just more of that stuff. They'll do it every single time. The manuscripts, they don't want anybody looking into those manuscripts because they contradict this set of lies people have agreed upon called history. That's man's history. A bunch of lies people agreed upon. But those things like that are well protected, unfortunately. They have the manpower. They have the money to keep it secret for a time, but people are going to know sooner. But isn't it interesting, Pastor Paul, how that we talked about that subject, and somebody pointed me to about 4 or 5 articles that just popped up out of nowhere also about Tibet, right? Isn't that funny? Because I think you said that on your show, right? Tibet.
Yeah. Yep.
You said something about Tibet. And all of a sudden, here we are, but coincidence?
Yeah. No. I think they're listening to what we're like. I think a lot more people are listening than what the numbers are doing. And the people that are listening, I think, are listening very closely to see what it is.
You know what Hitler did, right? What Hitler did?
No.
Hitler did it first. America took it over. They built a machine. They took a Tibetan monk and put him inside this machine to affect the entirety of the earth. This is well documented, right? It's well documented. They built 6 of these machines. These machines still sit on the earth. So anybody with meditative powers, they believe, can sit in these machines, and their biological energy is amplified through conventional electronics, and a strong pulse and a wave is sent around the planet. Harpers are utilized as part of a jump station for that device so that they could complete the circle of it to affect the mood of the earth. In other words, to externally affect how you feel about things and how you interact with things. And they were using some of the high meditative individuals from Tibet to do this, and that began with Hitler. It was continued in the U.S., and they have spent trillions of dollars up until 2021 on these projects.
I'll leave it right there, Mike. I'll leave it right there. And wait a minute, Heidi, you got something?
I want to know why there's Sumerian and Egyptian.
Heidi wants to know why Sumerian and Egyptian texts are in that library behind that wall.
Because history is a controlled movie, right? And the real history, they don't want people to find out, because if they find out, it's going to go right back to the stories that are in Genesis, and it's going to go back to Enoch. And if that's proven right, then people are going to start believing the Christian narrative. They're going to read the books of Baruch and the Esdras, and then they're going to find out that God was talking against government. And then they're going to find out that God never wants man to be a governor over man, but that all souls be free and live in a total different way. So they don't want that to get out, because then people who have faith would say, wait a minute, God didn't speak highly of you, government people, doing what you're doing behind these doors. That's why they keep it secret, because if all that's unlocked, they lose power.
Wow.
That's why.
That's why, Heidi. She said, okay. And Mike, we're going to leave it right there, okay? Because I don't even want to know what's behind that other door. I mean, what? No, I don't want to know. Jesus will help us understand that. I'll let you go, Mike. Thank you so much once again for being with us. I mean, you're stirring the pure minds up again, in Jesus' name.
Well, God bless you, Pastor Paul. It's always an honor.
It's always a privilege, brother, to have you on. What a blessing. God bless.
God bless.
Mike around the world, folks. I hope that answered your question, Heidi. Can't let us see what's in the Sumerian text and some of these other ancient documents, because it would prove the Bible to be true, and every man would be a liar. Are you saved? Give your life to Jesus Christ. Don't even hesitate. I want you to type right now, Pastor Paul, just type, I want to be saved. Let me pray with you tonight.